Hello and welcome back to another out of spec detailing video here from Clear Detailing in Northern Colorado. Today we have two electric vehicles from Chevy. We have the Blazer EV over here and the Equinox EV. And in today's video we're going to be doing a whole build quality analysis on both of these vehicles. First off, we're going to start walking around the vehicle, getting a general feel for how these things are screwed together, looking at panel gaps and fit and finish, and being extremely nitpicky. Next, we're going to jump inside and look at both interiors of these. Are they premium? Are they cheap feeling? Are they somewhere in between? We're going to find all of that out and more. Now, I will give a big disclaimer on this video. Both of these are press vehicles directly from Chevy, so do expect these things to be nearly perfect. But as you guys have probably seen here on this channel, when we get press cars in for our build quality analysis, they are not always perfect. Now, this video will, of course, be quite long, so I will chapterize this. You can skip around, skip over things you don't really care about, and jump to the most important information for you. But join me here as we take the Blazer EV and Equinox EV in our full build quality analysis. Let's jump into it. Well, my little buddy over here, Oliver, was supposed to be helping me with this build quality analysis, but he's decided to take a nap, so I guess I'm going to have to do it on my own. Now, Equinox EV and Blazer EV. This will be a very interesting video because on paper, these cars seem extremely similar. When you start talking about size, and then when you get inside, they honestly feel very similar to me. But the interesting thing is the Blazer EV is substantially more expensive than its compact SUV over here. So this is compact with Equinox and mid-size with Blazer EV. Here's the interesting thing though. Blazer EV's wheelbase is 5.5 inches longer, but it's only 1.7 inches total longer than the Equinox EV. The Blazer EV is also an inch wider than this and 0.2 inches taller. How is this a compact and that's a mid-size? We're splitting hairs here. But let's jump into price points on both of these. Now, with Chevy and GM, of course, trim level is really about everything. It's very confusing in my opinion. You have this one that is a 2LT, you have LT, you have 3LT, then you jump up into the RS, then you have front wheel drive, all wheel drive. So let's just evaluate these on this particular price point and this particular trim level here. So this one retails $49,295 with destination fee. You have the Super Cruise package, $2,700 here, and of course all wheel drive for $3,300. And again, this is a 2024 Equinox EV 2LT trim. Now we jump over here to the Blazer EV that is a 2025. This is the Blazer EV LT all-wheel drive for $56,535 with destination fee and definitely a few options in here, $7,540 with options. So realistically, I don't know, close to about a $7,000 price gap here. And again, very similar sized vehicle in my impression. To call this a compact and that a mid-size, really splitting hairs. But first off, we're going to start walking around and doing a build quality check, looking at the fit and finish to see how these both feel. Now again, these are press vehicles. They should ideally be perfect, but as we've seen here on this channel, sometimes we get press cars and they are far from perfect. I recently, just 2 days ago, did a Rivian R1T build quality analysis, and the door was literally touching the fender, taking paint off of it. So as we can see, we're going to evaluate this as is and see if these really justify the price point here. So let's start off with the Equinox EV. Now, throughout this video, and why I wanted to film both of these together, is we can make some really cool comparisons and contrast between the two to really see, is this one really worth $7,000 less than that, or is arguably that one worth $7,000 more than this? I think it'll be an interesting test. Now, throughout this video, we'll use one of these. This is a panel gap fitment check. Again, I really want to look around this and see, like, are there huge panel gaps? Does this thing feel nicely built? Anywhere in between, I think it'll be pretty interesting. But again, we're going to start here with with the Equinox EV. First off, a very striking front end here on the Equinox. Honestly, I think it looks arguably better than the Blazer EV. Really like the front end here. Very sleek styling, extremely modern. So here you have a running light that runs all the way across. And the cool thing here is they very much hidden the actual headlight housing. The actual headlight is down here. These are just your DRL running lights, and you can see how unbelievably sleek that looks. But let's start off here on the front hood and look at the panel gaps and fit and finish. Coming all the way down here, looking extremely smooth. What I can see here, hood is slightly sitting up, ever so slightly, but I would say arguably looks great to the naked eye. Moving over here to the passenger side, same thing going on here. Very tight tolerances all the way through. You can see a little discrepancy here, how the hood is sitting slightly farther up this way. Wouldn't say that's the end of the world, but looks pretty decent in terms of how this actually sits. Let's take a quick measurement here. Right at 4 millimeters, right at 4 millimeters, and right at 4 millimeters. Honestly, in my opinion, I truly think 4 millimeters is kind of the perfect gap for things like doors, hoods. I really think those tolerances are kind of the right amount of gapping. You don't want something super large. You don't want something extremely tight either, because that's when you get into panels physically touching each other, especially when they're movable. So far looking pretty good. Let's just take a quick measurement over here. 4 millimeters exactly. Up here I can see it's a little tighter, 3.5, about 3.5, but honestly, that looks pretty darn good. Now, over here we have, of course, our charge port area. The location of this, a little tricky, especially since you can charge these on Tesla and cable length is truly an issue. But let's pop open this charge port. Perfectly normal and acceptable, I would say. I'm not a huge fan of crazy powered charge ports. There is nothing wrong with a simple gas door mechanism on here. Again, I just think the area of which this is, maybe a little bit tricky. In here, we of course have our fast charging pins, AC pins up here, and yeah, a literal 0.2 cent of cover here. This thing is terrible. I would yank that off immediately, but close that down. I believe that locks with the key. That all seems pretty good. Now tolerances here, I would say, okay, definitely a little bit tighter from the bottom to the top. Let's take a quick measurement here. That's right about 4 millimeters and well under 3 millimeters there. So not perfect, but to the naked eye, can definitely see it's tighter here, a little larger up there. Wouldn't say it's the end of the world. Now this on the Equinox EV is interesting. And of course, this is probably based on trim level. I think it's very interesting. This is painted here on the cheaper version, and this is all textured black plastic. This definitely looks and feels, at least from the exterior, a little bit more premium. And again, remember, these are both LT trims. This is a 2LT. This is an LT. Again, Chevy's very confusing with all of that, but just wanted to point that out. Looking here at the bumper, super tight tolerances. You can see how nice that body line is. This whole wheel arch looks perfectly smooth, even all the way throughout. Moving to the front here, you can see we have park distance sensors, which is awesome. And we have one of the cheapest looking materials ever here. This is not carbon fiber. This is actually Farbon Kyber. That is the name for the fake carbon fiber. And yeah, that looks pretty tacky, pretty terrible in my personal opinion. Just make that, I don't know, matte black. I think that'd be a lot better. This is very cheap looking. It looks like an aftermarket upgrade that you made and probably purchased from AutoZone. So I'm not super into that. Well, honestly, this front end in terms of tolerances, everything's looking pretty amazing here. All the fit and finish throughout looking extremely good. The running light all the way through, dang, pretty impressed so far, to say the least. Moving down here to the passenger side, this side, absolute perfection. Interesting, we just did a review of a demo vehicle on the Macan EV, and the bumpers did not fit. Equinox bumpers here fitting actually better than a $130,000 Macan EV. So that's great to see here for Chevy. Looking here, again, arch liner, man, this is looking really nice so far. Look at the door all the way down here. You can see we have a rubber seal. Honestly, looks pretty good. I will say ever so slight bit of discrepancy here. Door needs to come up a little bit. You can see it up here as well. I would say that's pretty nitpicky there, but does seem to actually fit quite well. Let's try and get you a quick measurement here. About 4.5 millimeters there, 4.5 there. Hard to say right there because it's on an edge. About 4 millimeters there. Now you can see this gap down here is a little bit larger. I'm okay with that as long as it lines up from here to here. So that was about 6.5 millimeters. This here, about 6.5 millimeters. So that looks pretty good. The reason a lot of companies do that, expand that area, is because it of course has to tuck in when you get into the vehicle. So pretty nice there to say the least. Continuing down the door here, you can see we have all of this painted area here on the bottom. Now this paint, I believe, is the exact same paint that is on something like the Z06 C7 Corvette. All of the plastic trim is painted, I believe, in this exact same color. It's actually not just gloss black. It is a very nice metallic gray there. And again, the interesting thing, this thing's way more expensive and all of this is cheaper plastic. Again, it's probably based on trim level, but I'm surprised to see, you know, price point to price point, this one seems a little bit nicer, at least from the exterior so far. You can see our Equinox badge here with the little E in here in blue, indicating that it is the electric version. Okay, looks pretty darn nice. Fit and finish here on the door panel. Wow, holy cow. Chevy, what are you doing here? This looks amazing, actually. Look at the tolerances here. That's fantastic. It's been a while since I've been this impressed so far just walking around a vehicle. I mean, the tolerances look very tight, very even. Now, let's walk up here and talk about these door handles. They feel exactly out of a Kia EV6. I actually really like these, that they're powered. They feel great when you walk up to the car, auto present. And then again over here on the more expensive model, you have these. That feels more premium to me. The feel over here is actually pretty nice mechanical feel as you open up. I'm impressed with that. Door thunk seems great. The whole car shakes when you close that. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera. Let's give it just a nice normal close. Yeah, the whole car just does one of those. Okay, a little interesting, but nice door sound there. We'll say this one has the chrome trim that runs the bottom. I really am never a fan of basically all of these rubber pieces up here. I wish they were more of a plastic. They always wear very weird and start to look splotchy. Again, this one, no chrome trim down here, all of this rubber in here. This definitely, I would say, again, feels slightly more premium. Again, could be right down to the trim levels. But all of these windows, all the tolerances in here, dang Chevy, pretty darn good. We'll say you can see this one's ever so slightly bent down. Looks a little slightly weird, but not the end of the world. We of course have roof rails on the top. This one does not have a sunroof. I think one of the interesting things with both of these is that you kind of have to get the higher trim or top trim to get sunroofs in them, which seems a little weird. Why not make that an option? You know, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 option, whatever Chevy wants to charge, and get sunroofs in the lower trims. I think that's a little bit strange there, to say the least. Now the back end here is an interesting design. I will say from back here, Blazer definitely looks a lot more premium, a lot nicer. This to me just looks kind of meh. It's really interesting how they have kind of this bench here. Like, why didn't they increase the interior space in this? Probably because it's literally only 1.7 inches smaller than that. And they technically needed to make this one smaller to justify the price point for that. But that is pretty weird, to say the least there. Now, again, your total length on this could be extended by that, but yeah, it just seems weird how that kind of protrudes out. You'll see the difference over there on the Blazer EV. Looking up here, all the tolerances, honestly, like, completely blown away with this, in all honesty. This spoiler is sticking out ever so slight bit there. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's not too bad, especially to the naked eye. Tolerances all the way across there look great. Here and here look great. Pretty darn impressive. Even all of this piano black trim on here. all is fitting pretty darn well. Now let's come here to the back end, and I am seeing some quite large gaps. Now this could be by design, but let me show you here. So if I stick this in here, just under 4 millimeters, and I can tell you this is 9 millimeters down here. Now, is it the same on this particular side? A little bit less for sure. And then this is actually pretty tight, like almost touching in there. So a little discrepancy here, at least on the rear trunk lid. I would definitely say it's not perfect. Other thing I'm noticing here, that light bar sits higher than the actual taillight. Same thing going on here. That could definitely be an adjustment on the inner side of the trunk, but we're testing it as is here. I want to take a little measurement here because this seems like a little bit large of a gap to me. Maybe it's just how it looks, because that's about 5 millimeters there. Just about 5 millimeters somewhere in between there. So, okay, I think it looks okay. I mean, the tolerance here is extremely tight and pretty large down there at the bottom. This is also weird how this is sitting in here. It almost looks like that gap is a little bit too big. Is it the same on each side? Yeah. It's a little strange looking there. I don't know. That's my personal opinion. Looks slightly off, to say the least. Bumper back here, again, all of that painted gray. Have these very interesting slats down here. Check out the rear diffuser. Yeah, just looks pretty, I don't know. It doesn't really excite me, to say the least. It's not like an incredibly beautiful car from back here, but I will say it's definitely a nice vehicle. Let's see if the light bar will come on back here. The light bar is actually pretty darn cool that goes all the way through here. And again, here we have the light bar. I think this is actually a pretty cool design. It looks really nice when it's on, especially how you have this segmented in here. I think that looks very cool. And you also have this like nice frosted look to it. It's a nice even glow. I think this gives it a very distinct style, especially compared to the Blazer EV. Now I know on the RS you can get the full light bar, but even the rear here, of course, just has normal lights. So this looks pretty cool. I'm a big fan of light bars. I think this looks great. You can see the little Chevy emblem back here. We also have the Equinox EV. Now, when I looked at this, to me it looks like the badge is slightly crooked. I don't know if you guys can see that. Maybe it's just me, but it looks like somebody installed that didn't have a right shoe on and got it slightly off. But I will say, side's looking great here. The trunk to me just seems slightly off. So this would be my first kind of gripe here. Let's open this up. Pretty smooth actuation throughout. Nice powered here. Good reasonable space. We'll compare that a little bit later. Close this down. Pretty quiet. Dang. That actually feels pretty darn nice. So let's roll over here to the driver's side. See if everything's looking pretty good. I'm pretty blown away with the tolerances on the door. I mean, those are tight gaps. Now again, same thing going on here. You can see this little chrome piece sticking up ever so slightly. I would say the door needs to probably come up a little bit. Tolerances here look great. Let's take a measurement down here yet again, because that is quite large. Woo, this one's definitely bigger than the other side. So that's about 8.5 millimeters. I think it was 6 on the other side. So definitely a little bit bigger. And I can tell you, this is a lot tighter. So the whole door to me needs to move. That's under 3 millimeters. So same thing that Rivian has down here on this kind of accessory piece that goes on there, needs to scooch over a little bit. Door tolerances though, pretty impressed here actually. Holy cow. Like look at this, the flushness, 4 millimeters. This all lines up fantastic. Even down here, looking great. Rear door, same thing. Yeah, wow. Holy smoke, Chevy. That looks pretty good. I'm impressed with that. About a 5 gap there. This is definitely a little tighter up here, 3.5. So that doesn't match perfectly, but I'm impressed with how flush they've gotten that. I think this is truly by design here, again, to be opened, but definitely will say that's larger of a gap than up here. So I will say so far, pretty darn impressed with this little car, honestly. I kind of expected it to be not very well put together, and it's pretty darn impressive. Bumpers here, look how fantastic that looks. So I would say Equinox EV, pretty darn good. Of course, not perfect. I would say the rear trunk definitely needs a little bit of work there. So let's move over here to the Blazer. And as you can see from the Blazer, very different styling from both of these. Now, they both do feel quite modern. I will say this one, especially from the front, very sleek approach. Again, this is subjective. I think the Blazer slightly looks better in terms of design. But again, the interesting thing here, both being LT trims, this being a 2LT, this a regular LT, having all of this plastic cladding is an interesting design choice. And I know you can get it in the higher trims, but yeah, it seems kind of interesting that the cheaper guy over here gets more kind of premium features, if you will, than the big brother. So headlights in here, very different style. You can see we have a normal headlight housing in here, how you have the DRLs, your headlight down here. I think that looks pretty nice. Very, of course, different styling between the two. I don't think they look bad. To me, they don't necessarily stand out. They definitely do more in these colors, but you know, driving down the road, you see one, you're like, oh, okay, that was cool. That was a new Blazer EV, but it's not like, whoa, look at that thing. That's pretty, you know, out of this world, where I think this one definitely gets some more looks, to say the least. But let's look at our build quality, fit and finish here, talk about tolerances on the Blazer EV. Let's start up here. Same thing as we always do on the hood. This looks pretty good, right at 4 millimeters. Right at 4 millimeters, and definitely a little bit below, so you can see it tapers in. Does get quite close. I will say the hood is slightly lower here. Honestly, the tolerances look pretty nice, especially not having a huge gap, but it's definitely not perfect all the way down. Let's check this side out, see if that's the same. So we want to see about 4 millimeters here. It's about 3.5 actually. That is right under 3.5 and right about 3. So definitely not perfect side to side, but I would say just looking at it from my eyes, it looks pretty darn good actually. Bumpers here, these actually fit pretty freaking amazing actually. Very nice tolerances throughout here. Again, seems to be slightly better than Macan EV that we just did. I don't know if that was a thing of just one Macan EV, but I was pretty disappointed with quite a few of the things, especially it being a Porsche. I know it's crazy to compare the two, but the bumpers fit better on both of these vehicles than the Macan EV we tested, so definitely have to say that. Again, over here, all of the plastic arch liners, I don't think it looks great. I don't think it looks that bad. I'm just surprised to see, once again, that one, the Equinox EV, this is all painted. I think it looks a lot more premium and better, but honestly, fits very nice all the way through. Very tight tolerances without. You have this very interesting, distinct kind of side area over here. Okay, looks pretty neat. Of course, on the other side is the charge port, but man, tolerances here, this looks great. Can see some weird paint stuff going on right here on this particular edge. This fits pretty good. Let's just take a measurement. It's going to be tighter than 5. Right at 4. Right at 4. This is a little bit bigger there, 6. And about 3.5. So not perfect there, but honestly, to my naked eye, and I hope you guys can see this all the way down, that looks pretty good. Again, opens up down here a little bit. About 6 and less than 5. So again, similar things going on. These aren't perfect. Like to see those tightened up a little bit. Let's move around here to the front end. Headlights looking actually really nicely placed in here. You can see how tight all these tolerances are. That looks fantastic. Even moving to this area where you would have the light bar, that looks great. Man, gapping here, pretty darn impressive. Look at this grille insert. Wow, really, really impressive so far. Even over here, headlight lining up very well. Everything on this side. Front end looks pretty dialed on this. Say the hood's a little bit off as we talked about. You can see a little bit larger gap here to it being very tight here as it kind of opens up. Wouldn't say it looks weird, but definitely wanted to note that. Now let's move over here to one of the world's largest charge ports. This thing's crazy. So let's get this opened up. Whoa. This has always been one of the weirdest charge ports. Very similar, of course, to Lyric. Slightly different, of course, design on the outside. But when we were out at the LA Auto Show last year with the whole Out of Spec team, we could not believe how slow the charge port was. And I think we got it to the point that it like overheated or something by opening and closing it. Again here though, have a very, look at this thing. what are you supposed to do with this? Where are you supposed to hang this? There's probably somewhere where it's supposed to go. Maybe there? I don't know. This is just terrible. Just yank that off. Like, we don't need that. Do a better cover there. And then you can see it doesn't even fit because you have this very cheap plastic piece. Ugh, don't like that at all. I'm surprised with how complicated they've made this charge port and how large it is, of course. Like, why does it need to be this complicated? Seems very weird. There is nothing wrong with the Equinox EV over here. Again, same charge port location. I think it's going to be an issue for quite a few people, but we'll see how that goes. Let's close this up. It's pretty slow. It closes nice once it gets up there, but dang, it's pretty slow. Looking here at all the gapping, looks pretty good until you get down here, and you can see that front plastic piece is sticking out quite a bit. Let's take a little measurement here. Yeah, that's about 8.5 millimeters. I'm going to tell you this side back here is definitely, whoa. Yeah, right about 5. So I think that needs to get tightened up a little bit. I don't know what it is, but manufacturers really struggle with that. When you stand back here, that front gap looks pretty large and not the greatest, to say the least. Now, one thing I didn't talk about was mirrors. Interesting that this has plastic underneath it and this has painted. Are these exactly the same mirrors? Those are literally exactly the same mirrors, but this is painted. Interesting. Cameras down here, 360 cams. We'll talk about those when we jump inside. Definitely would say this looks a little bit more premium than the Equinox EV. Moving down here, door handles. I would say they don't feel bad. The weird thing though here is you have this. Yeah, that's just a little weird. These to me just feel way more premium. And you kind of have this 2 click in there. So they're fine. Door closes nice. Nice solid door thunk in there. But I am seeing some issues going on here. Look at the tolerance here. So really tight, huge tolerance up there. That whole door looks like it's just completely turned. Now I don't really see it down here in this particular area. But man, this looks a little wonky, to say the least. So 4.5 millimeters up there. I'm not even going to get a measurement. You guys can probably tell. That's about 8 up there, if not even slightly bigger. Ooh, that looks a little weird. And then you see back here, extremely tight. So I definitely think something's going on here. It needs to get turned a little. We'll check the other side. Coming back here, doors fit pretty good. We'll say, no, they do fit pretty good. I thought it was sticking out ever so slightly. Actually, it kind of may be. I don't know, it's a little hard to see there. Definitely feel like this back door is sticking out a little bit more. Front door looks great throughout. But let's move back here to the back end. I really like the look of this rear 3/4 view on the Blazer EV. Again, my personal opinion, I like these little spoilers that come up. I think the taillights very much fit the back. But again, you can almost see how much more flat this one is than over here to the Equinox. I don't know, that lip and ledge that they have coming out, pretty darn interesting. Looking here at these little bumperettes, looking pretty good. Taillights fit very nice all the way throughout. This fits a lot better. I will say, not perfect though. You can see that taillight sitting up. A little bit nitpicky there, but I will say definitely feels a little off. This one definitely seems slightly off side to side. So let's check this out. Yeah, you can see the tolerances below 3 millimeters there. So that's about 4 down there. What's this side looking like? Yeah, a little over 4. But you can see here to here is definitely a little bit off. So would like to see that kind of tightened up a little bit. Let's open this up. Nice smooth actuation there. Dang. Initial impressions back here, the trunk seems smaller. I don't know. I'll need to look at cargo capacity, but dang, that seems smaller. Also noticing, what the heck is going on here? That looks very weird. That looks very weird. I don't know. Let's close this down. Smooth all the way down, then pretty noisy at the bottom there. Wouldn't say that that's a bad thing, but definitely just wanted to note that. Looking here, you can see his bumper sticking out ever so slightly. Would say that's not perfectly in tolerance. All of everything up here looks pretty good except for this little area. You can see there's some movement here in this particular spoiler. What about this side? Yeah, same thing. That does not even seem like, ooh. Yeah, that's not ideal. So that needs to be a little tighter. This up here looks great though, even the trunk lid coming down. All those tolerances look good. The third brake light looks pretty good in here as well. But yeah, definitely some stuff going on here with that kind of black plastic spoiler. Let me walk around the other side here. We'll get to the passenger. Honestly, guys, I'm kind of feeling like, I really think the Equinox is like a little bit tighter in terms of tolerances, like some bigger gaps here on the side for sure. You could see that kind of B-pillar area. This side looks a lot better. This is how it should look. So some weird stuff going on over there. I mean, okay, maybe there's even, but I mean, if you're spending more for this, you expect it to be a little bit higher quality. To me, with these two examples of each one of them, I would honestly say the Equinox feels a little bit slightly better in terms of, you know, just the fit and finish throughout. So I would say pretty darn good though, in all honesty. There's definitely some areas that need to be fixed. Gotta say, it's not really what I expected in all honesty. I kind of expected to come in and these cars kind of be thrown together and not like super tight gapping, super tight tolerances. Pretty darn impressed in all honesty. So I think next steps, let's jump inside and talk about the interior. And in all honesty, I think this is where these cars for me are really going to lower the score, because we've owned a lot of GM products in the past. Interiors, in my opinion, especially when you get to plastics, not their strong suit. So let's jump in. I don't really know where to start first here, but let's look at the Blazer, get kind of a general look at this. And then let's come over here to the Equinox. The differences are so small. And that's not saying in terms of size, but like just the screen layout. I'm looking at, you know, all the buttons on there, the steering wheel, they're nearly exactly the same. The air vents are slightly different, okay, and in a different spot. So you can see here, the air vents are in between the screen and your bottom controls. Where here, the bottom controls are on the screen and the little air vents down low. Honestly, these to me don't look like $7,000 of difference in between them. And what's interesting is like here, okay, you have this big cubby in here. Over here on the Blazer, no cubby. So more storage space slightly here. Man, this is going to be an interesting comparison. So let's first start off, I guess, on the Equinox, talking about the door panel. Then we'll come over here. We're going to compare and contrast these. So looking here, very plain Jane door panel. And the first thing I notice is how cheap the plastics look, especially down here. These are, yeah, not very high quality, but that's GM injection molded plastics. That's how they do their vehicles. I am not a huge fan of them. I think, you know, especially for a lot of the price points they're at, like consider this, you can get a brand new rear wheel drive Model 3, even a Model 3 all wheel drive for probably cheaper than both of these. And the materials inside blow these out of the water. So you're going to hear me complain quite a bit about the materials here. I've driven both of these. They're reasonably comfortable. They're reasonably quiet. But in all honesty, to me, they both very much feel like a rental car. And I don't mean to be so harsh on Chevy for that, but I don't know. That's just my impression and my feelings. So looking up here, we do have some soft touch material up here. This material does not feel very nice. We have a very interesting blue fade that comes all the way through here. So this is all kind of this ice blue. Now, if I remember right, Blazer EV had a red kind of accent option and like the vents and things. Maybe that's in the RS version. I don't know, but okay, pretty interesting there. We have some very cheap feeling, scratchy, nasty plastic here. Buttons feel totally fine. Door handles feel fine. This though, oh buddy, that is some very cheap feeling plastic. This is going to get absolutely destroyed. Now again, this vehicle is really meant to be the cheaper brother, the smaller brother to the Blazer EV, but I don't know. For me, $50,000 is not a cheap car. I personally feel like just looking at this door panel, this is far below a lot of the competition in terms of plastic feel. Like you just start looking at all of this stuff, it just feels very cheap and not premium whatsoever. Looking at the seats here, you can see we have some stitching. We have quite literally no side bolstering and one of the flattest bottom seats I've ever seen. This one has a manual control on the passenger side. And let's go over here and talk about the door panel. Honestly, okay, slightly nicer. Like, okay, cool. We have some stitching here. This material feels pretty cheap and terrible. This material, same thing. The plastics here, okay, maybe do actually feel slightly better in terms of this door panel. This is literally out of the Equinox EV right here though. These feel exactly the same. Very same, extremely cheap, very bendable, nasty plastic down here. So I would say between these two, you know, almost north of $50,000 for both of these. Ooh, definitely feel not the greatest to say the least. Again, coming over here, I can't tell that what seats are what. I mean, okay, this has this little white mark. That looks identical to this, does it not? Yeah, pretty much. Okay, so I'm kind of struggling here to understand why these cars are so similar. I mean, in terms of size, in terms of interior, like, does this one feel any nicer than this one? Not really. I think you can get in both of them and they both feel equally meh, to say the least. So let's continue on here. Now, one thing I do have to say, I quickly drove both of these and I will tell you, I don't know what it is. When I sat in here, it felt like sitting on rocks though, compared to the Equinox. This seat, the driver's seat at least, felt more comfortable than this driver's seat. I don't know what that is, just wanted to point that out. So of course here you can see with the steering wheel, we have our Super Cruise up there. Actually a pretty nice steering wheel. Another interesting thing I'll tell you between driving these two, this steering over here feels a lot lighter than Equinox. The Equinox feels almost too weighted. And I didn't see any options in the screen here to change that. Let's get the screens going here. I will say the screens are actually very high quality on both of them as we get all of the dings. Holy moly. Okay, we're gonna have to close the door here. And beeps, more beeps, holy beeps. Are we in a VinFast right now? Yikes, lots and lots of beeps. Okay, so I will say once you're in here, the interior does feel okay because all of these touch points are pretty soft. This is pretty ergonomic feeling over here. It's just some of the stuff you look at, like this, what I would expect to be heads-up display up here, but it's not a head-up display. I don't even know what this does up here. Feels and looks very cheap and plasticky. How are all these materials? So this is soft touch up here. This is cheap plastic. That's cheap plastic in there. You have this very interesting kind of three-dimensional vent design. Do you like that? I don't know. Looks interesting to say the least. Open and close that. Feels really actually pretty darn nice. Yeah. Okay. So getting a general feel in here. I will say it's not terrible, but it doesn't blow me out of the water. Like I've been in quite a few nicer vehicles even around this price point. I personally do feel like, you know, Model Y at this price point does feel a little bit nicer. Yeah, I don't know. Interesting things. I do think a lot of people are going to like actually having a display up here. Tons of information, highly customizable up here. And again, these screens are identical. It's very cool as it's literally completely blown out. Why is that so blown out? That you can have your Google Maps up here. I do think that's pretty cool. One of the killers for a lot of people in these vehicles, no Apple CarPlay. Now, I believe you do have, yes, you have built-in Spotify. Whoop. Steering wheel is in the way. Built-in Spotify, built-in Waze. That's nice. I think the biggest thing a lot of people complain about is not having Apple Maps, which I don't know why is such a big deal. Let's quickly see here how route planning is. Let's go to search. Let's do our normal Las Vegas. This isn't really a build quality thing, but I do like to quickly touch on You know, a little bit of route planning, a little bit of software. I normally leave that to Kyle, but let's see how quickly. Bam! That's pretty quick. That's actually pretty darn decent. I will say that's a lot better than a lot of the other competitors in here. This is, of course, using Google Maps. You can see all your charge stops in here. Seems pretty reasonable. Only issue I'm seeing is like you're pulling in at 37% state of charge, 20s. It's not ideal. We obviously, that's not the out of spec way, but I gotta say, I'm extremely impressed with the quality of the screens here, actually. They are very high res and look pretty awesome. Now, there is something very strange here in the Blazer, and it appears to be a software bug. Now, let me see if I can find it over here. Where's it at? Interior. I don't know. I believe Kyle told me that this actually had heated seats, heated front seats here. Now, normally that would be down here. Ours has a bug to where you can't select heated seats. What's going on with that? You know, you go in here, is there an actual climate menu, or is this all you can do? Huh. I have not played around enough with this software. Kyle seems to think it's pretty decent, but that is pretty weird that it doesn't have, you know, any sort of heated seats, even though ours technically has it. Now, the interesting thing here, we have, you know, these on here you can come in and touch, or you have these very nice clicky scroll wheels here. Let's turn the fan down. I think this is great. So you can either use the touchscreen, you can use these. You have some more climate controls down here. I will say just initially, hello, as that's going a million miles an hour. The one thing I was looking for is the volume knob, because this is it up here. Now, interesting area that it's in. I do like the feel. Look at the actual display in there. That's pretty darn cool, actually. But to me, it needs to be like centrally located here, because a passenger having to reach all the way over here is pretty interesting. You do have some volume controls here on the back of the steering wheel. Those feel pretty GM, very clicky, very plasticky. Over here you have your regen paddle, which you can actually pull. Interesting implementation there. I think the steering wheel is actually pretty nice. My only complaint, I've never liked having your Super Cruise up here. It feels very weird in the hand to me. Some people actually like that. My friend and colleague, of course, Kyle Connor, actually likes it quite a bit. But I think this is laid out pretty well. You have everything you need here at your fingertips. Change your displays up here. Nice clicky buttons here. No complaints really with steering wheel other than this. I'm not a huge fan of. Got in it this morning. It was very chilly in here. Turned the heated steering wheel on. This is ice cold. So if you live in a cold climate, that could be an issue. So basic interior in here. I mean, it's a reasonably good layout. The materials look nice, especially up top here. Like, all of this actually feels pretty premium to me. I have no real complaints with this, but like some of the door panels, the very plasticky parts, not the greatest there, to say the least. We have quite a large cubby here. 2 Type-C ports. We have a wireless phone heater right here. 2 cup holders, adequately spaced. Plenty of room in there. This feels terrible. I mean, that feels like a literal $2 part, and you can hear it when you close it. Yeah, totally rattles. Don't love that. Yikes. Okay, let's jump over again to the Equinox. First off, the seats are way more comfy. I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is, but they're a lot more comfortable. Now again, same exact screens out of here, same exact steering wheel. I think one of the biggest highlights of these, steering wheel and screens, are fantastic. I also really like the buttons here. I'm gonna close the door as the other car is still beeping away. But honestly, this to me does not feel the $7,000 cheaper than that one. Like, or I guess I should say that the other way. The Blazer does not feel $7,000 more expensive than this one. This feels very similar. Like, you could put me in this car and I can start touching everything, and I'm like, they feel exactly the same. Now, I will say areas like this, oh, it is actually soft touch, very similar to over there. It looks a little bit more plasticky, especially all of these plastic grills up here. But honestly, I wouldn't say it's like a massive difference. You have these kind of very interesting blue painted hues over here. It's not my favorite thing. I don't know if you can option that differently. Very different console design here. Now, you don't have a wireless phone charger. Is it up here somewhere? Maybe not. I'm not a big wireless phone guy, or wireless phone charger guy, so that to me is not a big deal. You do have 2 Type-C ports here in kind of a weird location. I feel like this center console would get very messy and disorganized, I feel like, with that. But again, same switch gear here. This all feels great. These vents to me, okay, they look different. I wouldn't say these are better or worse than the other ones. They're definitely at a different position there, but I do like that you have this storage space down here. The only thing that does feel way less premium is the armrest here is like this very hard, not very nice plastic, but oh, interesting. This one folds sideways. It's definitely a lot smaller. Huh, okay. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's any better, any worse. Again, then we move over here, same air vents here. These feel exactly the same out of the Blazer. So next, let's jump into the rear seat, because honestly, arguably, I would say this feels more comfortable than the Blazer. I don't know what it is about this particular, the seats in here. They look exactly the same. The Blazer just feels like you're sitting on literal books. They are not comfortable whatsoever. So let's jump in the back seat of both. So here's where I think and probably hope we're going to see a bigger distinction. Again, just continuing to walk through these cars, I genuinely don't really understand why Chevy has 2 different vehicles here. To me, they feel so unbelievably similar. Now, there's small little nuances, but to have 2 totally different models, to me, seems like a very expensive endeavor. Now, that may be down to the case of, okay, Blazer EV is slightly bigger. Maybe does it have a bigger second row that's more comfortable for families, a bigger trunk area, and this is a little bit smaller? I don't know. Let's see. Now, I always bring up this analogy of vehicles, and some vehicles do this very well where, you know, like a Rivian, you have the front seat that feels like first class, second row feels like first class, and third row maybe feels like business class. Now, what I see here is the front end feels like you're in economy, and this feels like you're standing in the back of the plane next to the toilet. There is some seriously terrible materials here, starting here on the door panel. Every single thing back here is hard, cheap, terrible plastic. Like this, to me, this whole door panel seems like it cost them $2, maybe even $1.50. I don't know, but that to me does not feel that great. You can see here, very decontented rear end here. We have 2 very small little, very cheap air vents back here, 2 Type-C ports. I mean, $50,000 vehicle, what do you want back here? But this to me just feels like very cheap. Again, I very much get the feel that these are just meant to be rental cars, and I know that may be kind of a criticism to people who are wanting to purchase these, but man, these do not feel like premium vehicles. Every single place you touch back here is just cheap plastic. The back of the seats, even how these look, like, yeah, they don't look amazing, to say the least. Now, let's talk about space. Now, I'm a big guy, 6 feet tall, way too fat. That is my seating position in the passenger where I'd be comfortable to sit. I have space here. Up here, actually have reasonable headroom, not too bad. I will say the seats here literally have 0 bolster, like absolutely nothing. I'm surprised they didn't just do a single bench seat across here. Not really the most comfortable seat in the world. Not sure I could like totally sit back here for hours on end on a road trip, but okay. Now, let's go over to the Blazer and see if we can see a huge difference here. So first off, starting here on the door panel, cheap plastic. Okay, this is slightly better. I hear a rattle in there. This is terrible. This is terrible. This is terrible. This feels fine. This looks slightly better than the other one. Honestly, I don't see that much of a difference between these two other than this little armrest here. Looking at the back, okay, we have more premium air vents. Back of the seats look identical. Interesting, you have no seat back pockets there. Wait, you do on, what the heck? Why would you have that on the passenger side and not the driver's side? Is this one the same? Okay, something's wrong with this seat, okay? Because what the heck? What the heck is going on here? So this doesn't have heated seat, nor does it have a seat back pocket. Equinox has, something's up with this seat for sure. Something is very wrong there. So let's jump in here. Again, in my driver's seat. Okay, so back seats, way more comfortable. I don't know why. See how plush these are? The front seats are not. They feel like you're sitting on bricks or books. These feel fine back here. Actually, second row feels way comfier. Plenty of legroom. I wouldn't say there's much more than Equinox over there. Plenty of headroom. The seat also feels very reclined back. I don't know. Interesting. But honestly, like, maybe I am just like expect more. This rear seat is so bland. I don't know what I'm expecting to have back here, but there is nothing back here. And everything doesn't feel the greatest, in all honesty. There is something up with these seats for sure, because the back seat is more comfortable than the front seats. Okay, interesting. I don't know. ISOFIX points down there. In all honesty, this does not feel any different than Equinox EV. Like, the space inside feels almost identical. Let's pop this open. Okay, we can see the trunk in here. Seems reasonably big to me. Let's go over here to Blazer. Bum-ba-dum. Let's pop this open. There we go. So the floor on this definitely sits a lot higher. I mean, size difference here is so minimal. Where are you gaining the space having that 5.5 inch longer wheelbase and 1.7 inches? I mean, you are splitting hairs here, folks. If you're really on a budget and you really like GM cars and want an electric one, why would you not just go for the Equinox? This to me feels no different. I really gotta know what is happening though with these. What is that? Okay, that's a little strange. Let's fold this one down. Okay, a reasonable amount of space there. Let's do the same over here. I really don't. This trunk feels bigger to me. I don't know what it is. I think the loading height maybe at the bottom or at the top here, like this is probably slightly farther down. But man, the differences here are far and few between. That is a massive amount of space there. I don't know. To me, wow, these are so darn similar. And especially looking at this, like the materials, nothing feels different. I gotta say, look how terrible the carpet looks back here. Who installed that? Is this as bad? I mean, a little bit right there, but like, what in the hell happened to this? Yeah, that looks absolutely atrocious. Are you really gonna pay over 50,000 bucks for this thing to have quality like that? Yikes. Okay, interesting. Last couple things I want to check here are space. Okay, you have a reasonable amount of space here in the Blazer. This feels so cheap, very cheap. All the plastics, terrible. Those feel absolutely terrible. Let's see if the same is the case over here on the Equinox. Honestly, feels like the same amount of space. These plastics feel nicer in the back here. This is the weirdest video I've ever made. I don't know who product planned this and why we needed to do two different segments here. They feel genuinely no different. Now, okay, I know there's probably a fact of range, efficiency, probably batteries. I didn't go crazy on all the specs on this because we're just doing a build quality analysis, but I have never seen two vehicles from the same exact company feel so similar. And it's not like one is a coupe version of the SUV. You know, it's not like something like Audi Q5 and you get a Q5 Sportback. I mean, wow, so similar. Okay, last thing I want to see here, front trunks. Holy beeps and bongs. Let's pop open here, say hello to Mr. Oliver. Oh, great front trunk. Wow. Let's come over here to Equinox. Boom. What do you guys think? Is there any storage up here? I haven't even looked yet. There's no space. What the heck? What, like, why don't you put something here? You got all this space. Put something there. You can throw charge cables in there. Wow. This is crazy how similar these cars are. I mean, genuinely. Wow. Okay. So let me give you my final thoughts on both the Equinox EV. Wow, that closed actually really nice. And Blazer EV. So let me give you my final thoughts and feelings here on the Equinox EV and Blazer EV in terms of build quality. Honestly, exterior wise, I felt like these were actually pretty surprising. Genuinely not what I expected. I kind of expected these vehicles to be kind of slapped together, maybe would be the best thought that came to my mind first off. So I gotta say, reasonably impressed with both of them. Now, of course, there were some areas that were not absolutely perfect. And for press cars, I hope you guys understand that 9 times out of 10, they actually aren't perfect. But I do think this is ideally how these companies want their vehicles to be represented. So I would be anxious to get my hands on a customer delivered one of each one of these. Personally, I really honestly don't really understand the Blazer and why you would pick this over the Equinox. To me, they feel very similar. Okay, this is slightly bigger. I don't really understand where that space is truly going. Inside space is ever so slightly smaller in the rear seat of the Equinox over the Blazer, but in all honesty, I would save the money and go for this. I would say, in my personal opinion, the biggest complaint I have with these cars is just the interior materials are really quite poor. They're very GM, they're very low quality in my impression. Some of the like higher end vehicles, you get up into Escalades, you even get up into top trim, you know, trucks and things like that, they definitely are better. Now, after this video, we have the Silverado EV RST, which is the top trim bad boy on that. So I'm anxious to see, are the improvements for the interior better than both of these, or are you still having some of that very cheap plastic? So yeah, I would say build quality wise, pretty good on the exterior, not that great inside. It's left me wanting a lot more, to be honest. I really think these cars, and the interesting thing is we've received some emails and talks about what this car is versus what this car is. And they're like, this is for performance and a more premium experience. And I'm like, I don't get it. I really don't get it. None of these cars really scream anything that leaves me to come back and drive them. They very much are point A to point B vehicles. And in all honesty, in this segment, there's a lot of fantastic vehicles out there for a very similar price point that have a way high quality interior compared to both of these, and that arguably do quite a few more things better. Now, of course, the screens in here I really did like. Super Cruise is truly amazing. So there's definitely some pros and cons to all of this stuff, but man, this really left me shocked, in all honesty, of why you would have two cars so similarly spec'd and with literally same materials, same screen, same seats, same this, same that. I'm confused, in all honesty. So that's my final thoughts on the Blazer EV, Equinox EV. In all honesty, I think you can totally skip this and have a nice little vehicle over here with the Equinox EV. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in another one soon. Bye-bye.